including at Indiana, of some bizarre timing for. I didn't see this coming. I remember going home yesterday when I was listening to the radio and they said that Indiana had just fired Kevin Wilson, or Kevin Wilson was leaving Indiana. They didn't say fire, but that they were parting ways. And I thought, what is going on here? What can you tell us about this, Matt?
I thought the same thing. Everybody did, because he got a 6-year contract extension in January, and it's like, well, that makes sense. He took him to their second bowl game since 1993, and then now this year, Indiana goes 6-6, and most schools maybe that's not acceptable, but Indiana, that's back-to-back bowl appearances for the first time since 1990, 1991. So it was certainly a surprise, and then ESPN had some reports about possible questions about mistreatment of players and in terms of health concerns. And at the press conference yesterday, Indiana Athletic Director Fred Glass was very, very mysterious, or vague about what caused the firing. He kept saying philosophical differences was the reason, and he would not go into it. Kevin Wilson technically resigned, but he took a very, 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 very low compensation for doing so. He had 5 years left on this deal, over $12 million left on his deal. And I think he's getting between $500,000 and $600,000 for a year, and that's it, to walk away.
Wow.
So clearly there's something Indiana is not telling us. And it is a shock, but Tom Allen, they elevate the defensive coordinator, which is a no-brainer, but still a lot of questions to be answered, because Indiana left it pretty open-ended and didn't really give a clear explanation for why.
Yeah, it's interesting because he actually had success there. We know so many different coaches who have gone to Bloomington, had great ideas, had great coaching staffs, had great players, but for whatever reason didn't win. But Tom Wilson did this. And I can't help but think, Matt, that this might be a similar situation to Kansas, where they had Mark Mangino, who also ended up losing his job because of some issues with players and some of the verbal abuse, as well as some physical abuse that was alleged. And they haven't been the same. I'm wondering if we might see the same thing with Indiana.
It's possible. I mean, and Indiana has never reached that heights, and they're stuck in the Big Ten East with Michigan, with Ohio State, with Penn State, with Michigan State. It's always going to be tough in Indiana. It's a basketball school. They've, as you said, they've been to 2 bowl games. This will be the 3rd bowl game since 1993. And in that time, they haven't won more than 7 games in a season. So it's always an uphill battle. Wilson has made strides, and I think they have a good choice for the new head coach in Tom Allen, but it's, you're still, what's the ceiling? Finishing 4th in the Big Ten East. So it's always going to be tough. They'd be easier if they're in the West. And, when you have a change like this, there is good continuity, but as you said, there's always a question of whether or not they can match this, because we've seen over and over in the past 25 years that getting to 6 wins is really, really tough for Indiana. So, it's going to raise a lot of questions, and there's certainly no guarantee that they're going to keep improving, as they seem to be improving pretty steadily the past couple of years, but there's no guarantee that they're going to improve any more than where they are now, based on the division, based on the level of competition, based on this change.
Well, and it seems like players or former players have different reactions to his coaching methods in terms of how harsh he was and whether it got the job done. Some saying it was really harsh. It did get the job done, though, and others having different viewpoints. Have you heard anything from players in terms of what they feel?
Yeah, I think when you mentioned Mangino earlier. I mean, if you go back when Mangino was fired and when Mike Leach was fired, Kevin Wilson had quotes in an article about those firings and was kind of advocating for the old school tough mentality. You can kind of see where all of this happened. He's kind of an old school coach who maybe is, takes a little bit more of an aggressive or physical approach or tough approach. And, football's changing. And, we saw what happened with Tim Beckman at Illinois last year too.
Right.
So, philosophical differences is not that hard to read into what that could mean, especially because when Fred Glass was talking about Tom Allen, I forget the exact quote, but he was saying, he's tough-minded, but he's fair and positive and things like that. And it was kind of clear he was sending a message. The word was he's not demeaning. And it was kind of clear that was just, you could read between the lines what he was talking about with Allen compared to what he saw with Kevin Wilson. I think that was the word that really stuck out from yesterday's press conference.